Hello, viewers. How are you? What's up, Katie? Hey, you guys. Oh my god. Happy New Year's. I mean, happy Halloween. Trick or treat. I have trick. I have a treat for you today. It's called a story. It's called Chapter 2. I also have a treat for myself, which is this. Can you guys see? This is called chia seed. Konjac jelly. Konjac jelly. I don't know what that is. Let's see how it tastes. You guys get spooky lighting, yes. Hello. Oh no, individually wrapped. I hate individually wrapped. Okay. Alright. Oh crap. Oh, wait a minute. It's liquid. Oh shit. Hold on. Is it liquid? Ew. Hmm. It's like jelly, but very liquidy. Ooh. I taste the chia seeds. Do you guys know what chia seeds are? I look exactly like you expected me to look. What do you mean? How did you expect me to look? Like an Asian person? Some people think I sound white. They're like, wait, I thought you were white. You're actually Asian? What the heck? Tell us the taste. It tastes sweet. Kind of like grapes. Yeah. Yeah, but it's very watery jelly. It's like watery jello. Not bad. I'm gonna give it a 6. You have exams today? Well, good luck. I hope you ace your exams. What kind of exams do you have? They mean I'm beautiful? Well, thank you. 8 days till your birthday. All right, Daniel. Happy early birthday. All right. You have a good birthday. Healthy. Is this supposed to be healthy? Well, I guess it is. It says nature's great superfoods. Yeah. I'm not sure this is healthy though. I really doubt it. How many packaged things are healthy? Yeah. You guys, whenever like all these health foods, like whenever they say there's a superfood, like hey, whenever there's a one food that's just that is supposed to be super nutritious and be everything you need in a food, yeah, don't believe it. There's no such thing as a superfood, right? I believe they say like you should just eat a lot of different types of food. Just eat a variety of foods. Never eat just one thing and think that that's gonna make you healthy. What's up, Bigfoot? Glad you could join. You hate Halloween? Why? What's up, Lady Koi? You're also Asian, but your name is Raymundo. That doesn't sound like an Asian name. I looked a lot like your I sound a lot like your cousin. And you picture me looking a lot like him. Okay. Awesome. I hope your cousin is a good looking person. Bigfoot, your name is way too long. You take up like two lines in the chat. What the hell? Variety is best. True. Oh yeah. I also have this. Ooh, it's a candle. See? I'm in the Halloween mood, even though Halloween is done. All right. Let's do it. Chapter 2. All right. Last week we had chapter 1, which was a big chapter. A lot happened. All right. So let's do a recap of what happened last week. Thanks for the uploads. Thank you. I'm glad you like the channel. All right. What happened last week? So last week we start the story. It opens with two people fighting with like a crowd watching, right? So it's a martial arts contest between two factions of the same sect. This is called the No Measure sect. So apparently every 5 years they have this contest, this martial arts contest, to determine who gets to live in this palace on this mountain. Okay. So while they're fighting, we meet one of the main characters, Duan Yu, right? So Duan Yu laughs at their fighting, right? And then one of the leaders gets mad. Now, Duan Yu, this guy, he seems educated, he seems well spoken, but he seems kind of naive about the martial arts world. So he says things that make people mad, right? So they're about to beat him up, all right? When a girl saves him, right? This girl, she sicks her marten on this guy that's beating him up. So a marten is like, like a ferret type animal, like a ferret. Yeah. It looks like a ferret, I guess, but it's a marten. It's kind of like her Pokemon, right? She sicks him on this guy that's beating him up, and the marten crawls all over inside this guy's clothing, and he makes a fool of himself. Then hijinks happen. And we find out that another sect was attacking them, was attacking this No Measure sect. Okay, this other sect was called the Divine Farmer Clan. Right? Apparently, they're good at poisons, and they're using their poisons to attack this sect. Duan Yu and this girl, her name is Zhong Ling, they run away. But Duan Yu, being a naive dude, he wants to save the people in the No Measure sect because he doesn't like fighting. So he wants to go and tell this Divine Farmer Clan to stop attacking this No Measure sect. Now, Zhongling, it seems a little bit more aware of what's happening in the martial arts world. All right, she seemed more aware of how things are supposed to work in this martial arts world. So she's like, "Yeah, that's not gonna work." So she tries to stop him, but she can't. Right, and while they're talking, it's revealed that Duan Yu has a father who is very powerful, right? Duan Yu's father knows this powerful martial arts called the One Yang Finger, which sounds, I don't like that name. It sounds pretty dirty. Like, ladies, don't let him use the One Yang Finger on you. Someone suggested calling it the Yi Yang Finger, which sounds a little bit better. What about the Yi Yang Touch? I think that sounds the best. Like the Yi Yang Touch, right? So Duan Yu's father knows this really powerful martial arts, right? So he must be some really, really like strong martial artists. But anyways, so but Zhongling can't stop Duan Yu. So Duan Yu goes and visits the Divine Farmer Clan to try and stop them. But then of course he gets beat up. And then Zhongling sicks her marten on these guys and poisons a bunch of them because her marten, whenever her marten bites someone, it's a really powerful poison and they would die within a couple of days or whatever. So the marten, she sicks her marten on these guys, and the marten poisons a bunch of these guys, including the leader, right? And the leader had to cut his own arm off, to prevent death from poison. So the leader demands the antidote, but Zhongling says, "Oh well, only my father has the antidote." So the leader, like, well, you gotta go get your father. So the leader tells Duan Yu that he must go and get her father to give them the antidote. So Zhongling tells him the directions, but warns that her father will kill anyone with the surname of Duan. Right? So she's like, don't tell him your surname. For some reason, he hates people with the surname Duan. Duan Yu is like, okay. And then he goes off. And that's what happened. It's the recap. What happened last week. How's that? What's up, Datum? Datum. Oh, Bigfoot. That's the entire. You use all of the. You use What the hell's going on with my computer? Anyways. Wait, Bigfoot, you use the entire character limit for your username? Good job. Finger is accurate. Yeah. Like, I know it should be called like the Yi Yang finger because the finger is very accurate. Because they use a finger to. He uses finger. I don't think we should know. Well, I don't think we know yet. But he uses his fingers to fight. But it sounds pretty dirty, right? I don't know. Is it just me? I like Yi Yang touch more. All right, you bastards. You ready? All right, chapter 2. Moonlight shone brightly on the beautiful cliff. Or the jade cliff under the moonlight. Right, so Duan Yu is going to find this girl's father, right, to get the antidote. After all that mess, the moon has risen to the middle of the sky. Duan Yu kept on walking west. Even though he does not know any kung fu, his youth enabled him to keep this up. After about 10 kilometers, he has already arrived in the back mountains of No Measure Mountain. He suddenly heard the sound of water running. Feeling thirsty, he went searching and found the creek. Under the moonlight, the creek water looked clear and beautiful. Just as he put his Just as he put his what? Just as he put his blank into the creek, he heard the sound of a branch cracking, followed by the footsteps of 2 people. Duan Yu immediately lied down by the creek, not daring to make a noise. Someone said, "There is a creek here. Let's get a couple of drinks here before continuing." The voice sounded familiar to Duan Yu, as he suddenly recognized it as Gan Guanghao, the disciple of Zuo Zimu. Duan Yu became even more still. The 2 of them walked up to the creek and started drinking. After a bit, Gan Guanghao spoke up. "Sister Ge, looks like we are already out of danger. Let's rest a while before going on." The girl seemed to have agreed, as it sounded like both of them sat down by the creek. You're glad I'm continuing to do this? All right. Yeah. I'm glad you like the stories. The girl spoke up. You sure that the Divine Farmer clan won't have anyone this way? Her voice is shaky, obviously scared. Gan Guanghao tried to calm her. Don't worry, this path is as hidden as can be. Even some of us in the East faction don't know about it, not to mention the Divine Farmer clan. The girl asked, Then how did you know about this? Gan Guanghao replied, Every 5 days my master would take some of us here to try to crack the secret of the no-measure jade cliff. All these years, all we did was stare at the rocks, like a bunch of R words. Master kept on saying something to the effect of, to get things done, you must show perseverance and determination, and good things come to those with aspirations. But I really just can't stand it anymore. So sometimes I excuse myself to do that kind of personal business, to come out here and wander around. That's how I found this path. The girl laughed a little and said, So you don't want to put in the work and ran off? I say in your faction, you probably have the least perseverance and determination. Gan Guanghao laughed and replied, Sister Ge, in the competition 5 years ago, when I lost to you, the girl cuts in, Don't you say that you lost to me again. You pretended that your inner strength was weaker and let me win on purpose. Others can't tell, but don't you think I know? Guan Yu thought to himself, So this girl is a disciple of the West faction of the No Measure Sword. Okay, so these two looks like one of them is from the East faction and the other is from the West faction. Gan Guanghao replied, The moment I saw you, I swore to myself that I will spend the rest of my life with you, no matter what. Luckily, such a rare chance came today with the Divine Farmer clan coming to attack, not to mention that pair of bastard guy and girl and their stinking Martin. Oh, we know who he's talking about. The entire Sword Lake Palace was a mess, giving us such a great opportunity to run away. Wouldn't you say that this is good things come to those with aspirations? The girl laughed a bit and tenderly replied, I say good things came to those with aspirations for me as well. Gan Guanghao replied, Sister Ge, if you treat me this way, then I would listen to whatever you say for the rest of my life. Okay, looks like they're lovers, I think. Oh, is the text too small? I'm sorry. How about that? The girl sighed. With us betraying our masters and running off like this, we can't ever stand in the martial world ever again. We should go as far away as we can, find a nice and secret place, and hide there away from our masters and sect members. I'm scared just thinking about them finding us. Okay, looks like they're running away then. Gan Guanghao replied, I say you don't have that much to worry about. Seems like the Divine Farmer clan came prepared this time. Besides the two of us, I don't think anyone else would be able to escape. The girl sighed again. Hopefully. Guan Yu became very angry and thought to himself, The two of you becoming husband and wife and running off when seeing that there is trouble is really no big deal, but why wish death upon your master and martial brothers, such evil hearts? But he was still wise enough to figure out that if they found out he is here, then they would kill him to keep this quiet. So he still did not make a noise. The girl asked, What is the big deal about this no-measure jade cliff? You have lived here for 10 years now. Haven't you at least found something? Gan Guanghao replied, Since we are together now, I have nothing to hide from you. Master said that a long while back, at the time his master was the head of the East faction, under the moonlight, he often sees faint reflections practicing swords on the cliff. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a woman, and then sometimes they are sparring. The kind of sword skill they were displaying was something that he had never dreamed of, much less heard of or seen. It is as if they were angels. He hoped to learn couple of moves, but not only were the reflections on the cliff just too fast and too amazing, but they also seemed supernatural, as if non-existent. He just couldn't make out anything clearly, much less learn a move or two. The angels don't appear regularly either. Sometimes they appear every night. Sometimes there are months between appearances. My master's master became so obsessed with the reflections on the cliff that he actually became worse and worse at our own sex's sword skills and didn't even train his students anymore. That's how the West faction won later on. Sister Ge, when your master's master came to live in Sword Lake Palace, did she see anything? The girl replied, I heard from my master that her master saw the images on the cliff as well, but Grandmaster only saw the woman and never seen anything of the man. Maybe it was because her master was a woman, and so only the female angel appeared to her. But after 2 years, she was gone as well. Her master also said that the sword skills were incredible, but they were just too fast, and the reflections were too blurry for her to see it clearly. The cliff was separated by the canyon and the sword lake, so she couldn't get closer to have a better look. Grandmaster obviously received a gift from the heavens, yet she just could not learn even a move or two. For that, you can just imagine how she felt inside. After the reflection stopped appearing, she would spend days upon days staring at the cliff. She just got weaker and weaker until she died of illness about half a year later. She died lying on the peak and would not let her disciples move her back to Sword Lake Palace. Master said that even as she drew her last breath, she was still staring at the cliff. She paused a bit before continuing. Brother Gan, do you really believe there are angels? Or are our Grand Masters lying to us? Okay, so apparently a long time ago, the leaders from both factions of the sect saw these reflections on the Jade Cliff of people fighting and doing like some pretty cool sword moves. And but they were just moving too fast, and the reflections were just like too blurry, and they couldn't see it clearly. So they couldn't learn the moves, but they were so obsessed with it that I guess this leader died. Did the other guy die too? No, one of the leaders died, and the other one became so obsessed that he didn't even train his students anymore. So it seems to be some really good martial arts. Gan Guanghao replied, I don't think both our grandmasters made up such a story to deceive their disciples. Even if we believed it, then what? Besides, Martial Uncle Shang told me that he saw the images with his very own 2 eyes. But are there really angels in the world? That I do not know. Where is Chao Feng? Not yet. We're only on chapter 2. The girl asked, is it possible that it's 2 masters practicing swords in front of the cliff and was reflected onto the cliff? Gan Guanghao answered, Grandmaster thought about that as well at the time, but right in front of the cliff is the Sword Lake, and west of the lake is the canyon. Even if the 2 master martial artists knew how to walk on water and were practicing on the lake, Grandmaster would have seen them. If they were practicing on this side of the lake, then they really are too far away to cast any kind of reflection onto the cliff. The girl said, after my grandmaster died, her disciples performed rites and prayed in front of the cliff every night, hoping the angels would appear again. But they never did see it again. My master also wants to just get one glance at the angels, but it just so happens that we have lost both contests to your East faction in the last 10 years. I think so. Now we know why this martial arts contest that they do every 5 years is important. So anyone who wins gets to live on this place, right, on this palace, and they get to look at this jade cliff, right? So, um, so if the angels appear again, then they'll get to see the new sword moves, like these really wondrous sword moves, right? So that's why they want to. That's why they want to live there. So that's why they want to win this contest every 5 years. Gan Guanghao replied, "From now on, there is no East or West faction between us. We East and West are connected in marriage and merge as one." The girl moaned a couple of times and said, "Stop that." Obviously, Gan Guanghao is trying to get a little closer with her, but the girl is refusing. Gan Guanghao spoke up, "From this day forth, if I ever betray your heart in any way, then let me fall onto this creek and become a turtle." The girl coquettishly laughed. "He just turned into a turtle? Then what does that say about me?" So apparently in Chinese slang, a turtle is a man whose wife is cheating on him. Oh, like a cuck. A cuckold. When Duan Yu heard that, he couldn't help but let out a laugh. Oh, as soon as the laughter came out, he knew he was in trouble. So he jumped up and started to run. Gan Guanghao's voice came from behind him. "Who is it?" His voice was followed by the sound of footsteps coming after him. Duan Yu couldn't believe his luck and ran for his life. Suddenly, a flash of white came from the west. A girl with a sword in hand is coming down the slope as if to cut him off. Duan Yu let out an "Ayo!" and turned towards the east. All the while, he kept on praying, "Great benevolent and merciful." Okay. So it looks like Duan Yu is a super Buddhist. Great benevolent and merciful Bodhisattva, please bless and protect your humble disciple Duan Yu out of this mess. He can still hear the footsteps of Gan Guanghao chasing after him, so he kept right on running. After a while, he started having trouble keeping this up, and his breathing became very hard. Gan Guanghao suddenly spoke up. "Sister Ge, block that pass over there." Duan Yu thought to himself, "You giving your life away is really no big deal, but if you die, you are taking Miss Zhong's life with you, as well as all these people in the Divine Farmer clan. Now that, indeed, is a sin." Amida Buddha and Bodhisattva. Then his thoughts turned. "Duan Yu, my good man, so what if they become turtles? What does that have to do with you? Why did you laugh for no reason whatsoever? With that laugh, you have killed dozens of lives. Only unrivaled beauties can bring down cities with a smile or a laugh. Who do you think you are with this little laugh of yours? What are you planning on bringing down?" Even though he is blaming him and scolding himself in his mind, his legs had not let up yet. By now, he doesn't really care where he is going, just as long as it is deeper into the woods. Oh. Translator is explaining an idiom, blah, 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 blah. I don't think we need to read that. After running for a while more, Duan Yu's legs felt completely numb and soft. Suddenly, he heard the sound of water running. Very loud sound, in fact, as if the tides were just coming in. He looked up and saw a huge waterfall falling off of a cliff to the northwest. Over the water noise, he heard Gan Guanghao's voice. "Just ahead of you is the restricted area of our sect. No one can enter. If you just go forward a few more meters, you would be trespassing and will die without a burial place." Duan Yu thought to himself, "Even if I don't trespass into the restricted area, it's not like you'll let me go. Best I could hope for is dying with a burial place. Really not much difference between having a burial place and not having one." So he picked up his speed even more. Gan Guanghao shouted even louder, "Stop, now! Don't you want to live? Just ahead is..." Duan Yu laughed and replied back, "I want to live, that's why I'm running." Before he could finish his sentence, his foot suddenly had nothing to step on. He doesn't know any kung fu and is in such a hurry, how could he possibly pull back from that? So he just fell. He screamed, "Ayo!" but by now his body is already more than 20 meters below the top of the cliff, where he lost his footing. Duan Yu wildly waved his arms around, desperately hoping to be able to grab onto something. But as he is doing so, he fell another 200 meters or so. Suddenly, his bottom hit something and his body was sprung back upwards. Turns out that he fell onto an old pine tree that was growing out of the face of the cliff. With a terrible rumble, the huge trunk of the pine snapped, but the force of Duan Yu's fall had been mostly cancelled out. Duan Yu started to fall down again. This time he reached out with both of his hands and grabbed onto another trunk of the pine tree. So there he is, hanging in midair, swinging back and forth. He looked down and did not see the bottom of the canyon, merely clouds. At this moment, his body has been swung against the cliff. He immediately reached out with his left hand and grabbed onto a shorter branch close to the face of the cliff and found a place for his foot to balance himself. Only now was he able to calm down and slowly move his body completely up against the face of the cliff. He looked up to the old pine tree and said, "Grandfather Pine, thank you so much for your display of your abilities that saved my life. Back then, your ancestors helped Qin Shi Huang which is the first emperor of the Chinese in China, get out of the rain and was granted the title of 5th rank senior official. But how can saving a life compare with protecting against the rain? I'm going to give you the position of 6th rank senior official. No, on second thought, definitely 7th or 8th rank senior official." He looked around him carefully and saw that the cliff has a huge crack in it, one which he might be able to use to scale down. He took a couple of deep breaths to calm himself and thought, "Gan Guanghao and that sister Ge of his surely would have thought that I am dead by now. No way in the world could they have guessed that I would be rescued by an 8th ranked senior official. They have probably already left the mountain to work on their merging of East and West factions. Who knows what kind of danger is on the bottom of this cliff? But my life is living on borrowed time anyways. Doesn't really matter where I lose it again. But since Bodhisattva is protecting me, it's better not to lose it for her." So he started to slowly descend along the crack. Inside the crack grew a lot of weeds and small plants, so there really is no danger of losing his footing and falling again. The only problem is, this cliff seemed to go on forever. After a while, his clothing were full of holes and rips from the plants along the crack, not to mention his hands and feet. After what seemed like forever, he still hasn't reached the bottom. But fortunately, as the cliff gets to the bottom, it becomes less and less steep, not straight down anymore. So by then, Duan Yu was able to just half roll and half crawl down, which is much faster. So remember, this is a restricted area. No one is of the sect. No one is supposed to go in here. But the sound of water splashing just kept on getting louder and louder. Duan Yu started to worry again. What if the bottom of this is whitewater rapids? Large water pellets were hitting his face, which was actually kind of painful. Before he had too much time to think all this over, and it wasn't like he had much choice in the matter, he has reached the bottom of the cliff. When he stood up, he could not help but to scream in astonishment. For on the cliff on the left side, there is a waterfall falling from the sky like a jade dragon into a big and unusually clear lake. Despite the waterfall, the lake is not filled up, meaning that there must be a way for the water to leave the valley. The water where the waterfall enters the lake is in turmoil. However, merely a little bit over 20 meters away from the waterfall, the waters become calm and flat as a mirror. The moon shines down onto the lake, as there is also a moon shining back from the lake. Facing this scene, Duan Yu was left agape, not even able to sigh in astonishment. He looked over to the side and saw several bushes of camellias by the lake shore, looking as if they are alive under the moonlight. The camellias of Yunnan are the best in the world, and Duan Yu has always loved them. So now he actually stopped thinking about the predicament he is in and walks over to get a closer look at the flowers, all the while muttering to himself, even though there's lots of flowers here, there are only a couple of types really, and only a few feathered shirt, rainbow skirt are better than the ones at my house. These lotus every step over here, on the other hand, aren't pure at all. I think these are the names of flowers. After enjoying the camellias for a while, he walked over to the lake and drank some water. The water felt clean and soothing on the tongue, with an unusual sweetness as a cool and smooth string of water went all the way into his stomach. After recovering from the drink, he stood up and walked alongside the lake shore, hoping to find a way out. The lake is oval in shape, and more than half of it is hidden underneath bushes of flowers and trees. He walked from west to east and then back again to circle the lake once, which is a trip of about 1.5 kilometers. So he's walking around this lake, this forbidden lake. It turns out that the cliff surrounds the lake on all 4 sides with no paths out. The side that he fell from is the least steep portion of all, so it is impossible to climb onto the others. Looking up, he sees that the cliff extends to above the clouds. Getting down from halfway was almost impossible, but climbing back up is really impossible. Duan Yu thought to himself, even someone with the best kung fu in the world won't be able to get up there. So it's obvious there is not much difference between knowing or not knowing kung fu. By now it was getting close to dawn, but the entire place remained incredibly still. It looks like he's trapped here. Okay, there are cliffs on all 4 sides. Not a single trace or sign of an animal, not to mention humans. The only thing that could be heard was a couple of birds chirping at each other. Duan Yu started to worry again. It is no big deal if I starve here to death, but then that would mean that Miss Zhong would die as well. I can't let her down like that. Not to mention my mom and dad are probably worried sick about me. He sat down by the lake and worried in vain, unable to come up with a single idea as to what to do. In desperation, he started to imagine, what if I can turn into a fish? Then I could swim up the waterfall and get out of here. He turned to look at the waterfall more closely. Suddenly, he noticed that the cliff beside it is smooth like jade. He figured that this is probably due to the fact that a long time ago the flow of water was much more than it is now and wore the cliff down to its present smooth state. Then the water flow decreased and exposed this smooth as glass and bright as a mirror part of the cliff. Suddenly, the conversation between Gan Guanghao and that sister Xin of his flashed in Duan Yu's mind. So this must be the no-measure jade cliff that they were talking about. They said that back then when the moon is bright, the head of both east and west factions often saw images of angels practicing swords on the cliff. This cliff is right beside the cliff for the image to reflect onto it. They really have to be practicing in the middle of the lake. If I stand here on the east of the lake, my image could reflect onto the cliff as well. But the cliff on this side is straight up and blocks out the moonlight, which would make that impossible. Ah, I get it. Must be because there are some waterfowls flying close to the surface of the lake, so their images were reflected onto the cliff. From afar, then, of course, the movements are incredible, fast, and strange. They have already assumed that it was angels practicing swords, so that is what they thought they saw every time. Of course, they can't make anything out of the display of sword skills, and eventually went down the wrong path and became obsessed. So it looks like, I think, what's happening here is that the moonlight shines onto the lake, and then which reflects onto this smooth jade cliff, right? So he's saying that maybe there are some birds flying by that are they're reflecting onto um are reflecting onto the lake and then reflects onto the cliff, right? So there are two reflections, right? So I guess the birds would fly and then their images would reflect off of the lake and then onto the cliff so that people from afar, from the top, can see the images reflected onto the cliff. So they must have assumed that it was like um, two people sword fighting, but it was just birds flying by. At least that's what he's saying here. Once he figured all this out, he couldn't help but laugh a little. It has been 15 to 16 hours since the dinner at Sword Lake Palace, and he is getting very hungry. So he walked over to some bushes that had greenish red wild fruits grown all over them. He picked one off and bit down. It tasted just as sour as can be. But as hungry as he was, he didn't care and ate 10 or so in a row. After filling up somewhat, he suddenly felt tired and sore all over his body. So he lay down on the grassy knoll and had a great sleep. So like was there no people fighting at all on the like so were the people in the no measure faction were they just deluded into thinking that there were two people fighting with like some really good sword skills? He doesn't know how to fish? I guess he doesn't. This was one of the best sleeps that he had ever had. By the time he woke up, the sun is already slightly to the west. There was a rainbow in the middle of the lake, just as beautiful as can be. Duan Yu knew that rainbows in this place is common because of the waterfall, so he thought to himself, to be able to see such a scene before I die means that my fortune is not bad, and to think that I would die here among the flowers on the lakeside. Not bad elegance there either. Such a beautiful lake. Too bad the camellias aren't really of great standards. After sleeping, his spirits had picked up greatly. Maybe there is an exit in this place, hidden behind the trees and the bushes. I was just in too much of a hurry last night and might have missed it. Well, it's a realm of superstition, so everything might seem like it. Yeah, yeah. So they could have been just obsessed of over nothing. So he once again walked alongside the lake in search of an exit, all the while humming favorite tunes of his. He carefully searched everywhere with the greatest care, but behind all the bushes and trees were still just faces of the cliff, going straight up into the clouds. He didn't even find a snake hole, not to mention a real exit. The tunes that he was humming got quieter and quieter, while the heart became heavier and heavier. When he got back to where he fell asleep, his legs felt weak and he had to sit down. He thought, Miss Zhong tried to save me, but ended up giving her life away as well. Now that he is thinking about Zhong Ling, he took out her shoes from his shirt. Wow, he still has her shoes. Oh yeah, he had to take her shoes to show the dad, right? To show the dad that it was really her. He took out her shoes from his shirt and looked them over, remembering back to her small and smooth feet as well as her beautiful face. Ah, so he's a feet guy. He had to bring up the shoes to his lips and kiss it several times. Okay. What? Putting the shoes back into his shirt, he thought to himself, seems like I don't have a chance, and that means neither does Miss Zhong. If she was here and the two of us can spend what's left of our lives together, here on the shore of this lake? That would be great. Too bad she is with that goat beard. Xu Kong Xuan, no fun there. I wonder if she's thinking about me right now as well. Nothing to do, so he went over to the fruit trees to eat more fruits. Suddenly, he realized, I have searched everywhere but here. The cliff might pull as far as the edge of the world, but close to be in front of my eyes. He pulled the fruit tree branches aside, but shook his head in disappointment. Behind the tree is another bare rock covered with vines, no exit whatsoever. But a closer look revealed that this rock is smooth to the point that it looks just like a copper mirror, only it is much smaller than the one by the waterfall. Duan Yu suddenly thought to himself, could this be the real no-measure jade cliff? So he pulled some of the vines off the rock, but besides being unusually smooth, there is nothing special about the rock. Suddenly, an idea popped in his head. Nobody would ever know that I died here. No harm in carving a couple of words onto this rock. How about Duan Yu of Dali died at this place? Could be quite fun. So he pulled off all the vines. Then he took off his robe, dipped it in water in the lake, and wetted the rock. Then he used some grass to brush the rock a bit. By now the rock really does look like a piece of jade. He found a rather sharp rock on the ground and started to carve on it. But this rock turned out to be unusually hard. After much work, he barely carved out Duan, but the word was carved shallow and tilted, without the slightest trace of writing technique and skill. Duan Yu threw down the sharp rock and thought to himself, if someone sees this later, they will think that this Duan Yu doesn't even know how to write his own name. If I carve these 8 words, what kind of stinking legacy is that to leave behind? Besides, his wrist was very sore. He's Quagmire from Family Guy? Yeah. Kissing of that shoe, man. After it got dark again, he ate some more of the sour fruits and fell asleep. He dreamt that a pair of flowery shoes was flying around in front of his eyes. He is so much a shoe man. This guy loves shoes. Or feet. Yeah, he probably loves feet. He's a feet man. The shoes were green with yellow flowers, Zhang Ling's pair. He immediately tried to grab them, but the shoes kept on flying around like a pair of butterflies. He could never catch them. After a while, the shoes flew higher and higher. Duan Yu anxiously shouted, "Shoes, please don't fly off!" This shock woke him up. Finding out that it was all a dream, he rubbed his eyes, felt his shirt to make sure that the pair of shoes were still there, where they should be, and stood up. He looked up at the full moon. The silvery light shined down onto the lake, making it look like a layer of silver. His eyes followed along the surface of the lake. Suddenly, his whole body shook, for on the jade cliff up opposite of him was an image of a person. Needless to say, he was surprised beyond belief. Immediately, he took a deep breath and shouted, "Angel, save me! Angel, save me!" The image shook a bit, but did not reply. Duan Yu has now calmed down a little and looked at the image more carefully. The image is very faint and hard to see clearly, but the person is wearing a robe and a scarf, obviously a man. He ran forward a few steps to the lake's shore and shouted, "Angel, save me!" The image shook somewhat and got bigger. When Duan Yu stopped, the image stopped moving as well. After the initial puzzlement, he immediately understood. It's my own reflection. He jumped to the left. The image on the cliff jumped to the left as well. He took a step right, and so did the image. By now, there is no doubt in his mind that it is his own image, but he is still puzzled. The moon is on the southwest. How does it manage to shine my image onto the cliff? He turned around only to see that on the rock which he had carved Duan earlier in the day, there was also an image of him. Only this image is a lot smaller, but much more pronounced. He immediately understood the entire situation. So the moon shines my reflection onto this little rock, which in turn reflects my image onto the big cliff. It is as if I were standing between two mirrors. The big mirror would reflect my image in the small mirror as well. Okay, so now we find out the secret. Okay, the secret of the Jade Cliff. Okay, apparently there's a big jade rock that is very smooth. That's like almost mirror-like smoothness, right? And then there's the smooth jade cliff. So his image is reflected onto the jade rock and then onto the cliff. What's up, Freddy? Nice of you to join. Now that he has thought about this, he can't help but think there is nothing special about this mystery of the angel images that has puzzled the No Measure Sword sect for decades. There really were someone standing here practicing swords, and their image got reflected onto the cliff. There used to be a man and a woman, but later on something happened to the guy. Either he left or died, and only the woman was left here. She lived here all alone, and after about 2 years, she died of loneliness. Thinking about a beautiful woman losing her love, living in this canyon all alone, and finally dying in sadness, he couldn't help but be a little bit depressed. Figuring all of this out, his excitement earlier has now subsided. With nothing else to do, he started to wave his arms and legs wildly, pretending to be practicing kung fu. Hopefully, Zhu Zimu and Shuang Qing just so happens to be at the top of the cliff. When they see that angel suddenly appear on the cliff again, they would think that the angel is trying to teach them kung fu. Then they would try hard to learn this kung fu that I'm showing them, so they can pass it on to posterity. The more he thought about it, the funnier he felt, so he started laughing heartily. Suddenly, a thought popped in his head, and he stopped laughing. These two people only practice swords in his canyon once in a while. If they don't live here, then there must be a path in and out of here. Else, no matter how good their kung fu is, it is still way too much trouble to climb the cliff twice every time they want to practice swords. Those guys from the No Measure clan don't seem very bright. True. One mystery solved only to create another mystery. True. A ray of hope appeared to him. I'll go and carefully look for a way out. Didn't Gan Guanghao say good things come to those with aspirations? Heh, he aspires to marry his sister Ge, then I will aspire to get out of here. So he sat down with his arm around his knees, looking at the moon reflected in the lake, surrounded by all this quiet scenery, like quiet serenity. He started thinking, good things come to those with aspirations. That saying is true, but Confucius also said, those who like are better off than those who know. Those who are happy are better off than those who like. That saying fits my style much better. Mom and Dad sometimes calls me obsessive because I always get obsessed about stuff when I was little. Like when I was 7, I stared at that 18-scholar camellia plant from dawn to dusk, even sneaking up in the middle of the night to stare at it. All I did was think about it, even while eating and learning. When the flower wilted, I cried for several days straight. Later, when I started to learn Go, it was the same, constantly forgetting about eating and sleeping. All day, every day, all I did was think about how to play the game. This time, Dad told me to learn Kung Fu. Just so happens that I am interested in the Book of Changes. Even when I'm eating, I would wonder whether the chopsticks I'm using are the big halves or colleague. I don't want to learn Kung Fu. Was it really because I didn't want to learn Kung Fu? Was it really because I don't want to learn how to beat and kill people? Or could it possibly be because I didn't want to put down that book? Dad said I was unreasonable. Maybe I really was being unreasonable. Mom knows how I am the best. So she said to Dad, "One day when this kid gets interested in Kung Fu, you can't even force him to stop for a minute to eat. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If he doesn't want to learn, there is nothing you can do to make him. Ah, it is almost impossible to make me aspire to do something. Hopefully, one day I'll become obsessed with Kung Fu. That would make my mom, dad, and uncle all very happy. I just won't beat or kill anyone once I learn it. That's all. It's not like you have to kill to learn Kung Fu. My uncle's Kung Fu is so powerful, but he is so benevolent and merciful. But I don't think he killed a single person in his life. Even if he wants to kill someone, it's not like he has to do it himself." Sitting there by the lake, deep in thought, he lost all track of time. Suddenly, he noticed faint rainbow colors reflecting off of the smooth rock by his side. Looking at it closer, he saw an image of a sword underneath the duan he carved on the rock. The image of the sword was unusually clear for a reflection. He can clearly make out the handle, the hand guard, and sword point. The sword is pointing downwards. The reflection also emits a rainbow-like aura, moving and flashing around. He wondered, why is there extra colors in the reflections? He looked up to look for the moon, but he can't see it. Turns out that the moon has dipped below the cliff on the west side. That cliff face has a hole in it. The moonlight is shining through the hole. Inside the cave itself, there were some colorful lights emitting out. Suddenly he understood. I get it. There's a sword hanging inside of the cave. On the sword there are many precious stones and gems. The moonlight shines on the sword, and the gems make the jade reflect their image. No wonder it is so amazingly spectacular and colorful. He thought some more. One has to hollow out the sword body to inlay it with gems. Only then can the moonlight shine through the gems and create such an image. If the sword is not hollowed out, then the moonlight can't shine through the gems. Obviously, creating this sword took a lot of work. The hole that the sword is in is about 20 meters above the ground. No way for him to go and get a closer look. Looking at it from the bottom, only the varied colored lights from the gems can be seen, but the reflection on the stone looked like a scene from a beautiful dream, as if something stolen from the gods. So on top, there's a hole that moonlight is shining through, and there's a sword right there in the middle, right? So I guess the moonlight shines through the gems in the sword. Soon, soon the moon moved. The colors got lighter and lighter until it disappeared completely, and the rock turned back to a gray color. Duan Yu thought, that sword was probably placed there by that pair or masters. Such a steep and deep cliff, nobody in No Measure Sword would even dare to climb down to inspect the place. But if you stand on the top of the cliff, there is no way that you can see this hole and the sword. Even if No Measure Sword stood up there and stared at the cliff for another 100 years, they probably still won't know about this. Yet, even if you can get the sword, what's the big deal about that? After thinking about it a bit more, he fell asleep. In the middle of a dream, he suddenly jumped up. To place a sword at that place, how much effort and work would it take? Even if you are a kung fu master, it would still be a lot of trouble. To go through so much work, there must be something behind it. Maybe there are some secrets in that hole on the cliff. Maybe some secret kung fu manual is hidden there. Once his thoughts went on to kung fu, some excitement went out of his sails. Those kinds of kung fu manuals, No Measure Sword treats them like treasures, but if you put them in front of me, I wouldn't even open them up to read. The next day, he slowly walked around the lake and enjoyed the view. This is his third day inside the canyon. He has no food, right? Maybe he ate berries in the 3 days. He must be super, super hungry. He figured in 4 more days the intestine fragmenter would take effect. Oh, remember he has poison inside him. By then, there is really no point in looking for a way out anymore. He woke up at midnight that night and waited for the moon to dip west. After 3 or 4 hours, the moonlight started coming through the hole in the cliff, once again displaying all the beautiful colors upon this little smooth rock. The image of the sword on the rock is tilted towards the north, pointing at another big rock. Guan Yu's mind lit up. Maybe there's something about this rock. He walked over to the rock and pushed. The moss on it felt wet and soft, yet that rock seemed to have moved a little when he pushed. He pushed even harder. Now it is obvious that the rock is rocking. Really? The rock is rocking? This rock is chest high and weigh at least a ton, if not 2. Logically, he could never be able to move it. He felt around the bottom of the rock. Turns out that this giant rock was sitting on top of a small piece of rock. Turns out this giant rock was sitting on top of a small piece of rock, but he was unsure whether this situation was man-made or natural. His heart skipped a beat. Something fishy is going on here. Uh, 5 minutes, guys. Give me 5 minutes. I'll be right back. All right. So he found this rock, and then he figured out that he can push it, and it moves, right? So let's see what happens. He placed his hands on the right side of the rock and pushed. The rock swayed out of place, but then returned to its original position. There were some sounds of vines snapping coming out from underneath the rock, as if the 2 rocks were tied together by some vines. By now, there was not enough moonlight to see clearly, so he thought, wait until day comes, then I'll come and figure it all out. So he laid down beside the rock and took a little nap, and when he woke up, the sun had come out. He stood up and inspected around the rock. Then he laid down and got rid of all the vines and tiny stones between the 2 rocks. Once again he pushed. This time the big rock slowly rotated like a door. After a quarter turn, a meter-high cave appeared behind it. In his excitement, he did not even check whether or not there are dangers inside the cave before lowering his head and entering. After more than 10 steps, there is no longer any light in the cave. He held both of his hands out and felt around before every step, but the ground felt flat and smooth, as if he was walking on a stone path. It was as if the path was designed and made by humans. He could not help but get even more excited about this. The only thing is that the path continued to head downwards. Obviously, he was going lower and lower. Suddenly, his hands came into contact with some cold, ring-like object. As soon as he touched it, the object let out a loud and clear "tung." He touched it once more, and turned out the object was a door ring. Is a doorbell? The heck? Where there's a door ring, there must be a door. His hands felt around, finding several door nails. In surprise and excitement, he thought, if there is someone living behind this door, wouldn't that be weird? He found the door ring again and knocked 3 times. After waiting for a while, nobody came. He knocked the door ring 3 times more. Still nobody, so he pushed it. The door seemed to be made of iron and copper, heavy as can be, but it wasn't locked. So when he pushed, it slowly opened. He spoke up. I am Duan Yu. Please forgive me for showing up and barging in uninvited. No sound came from the inside when he stepped in. No matter how hard he stared, he still could not see anything. The smell of mildew surrounded him. Seemed like nobody has been living here for a very long time. He continued to walk forward. Bang! His head suddenly bumped into something. Luckily, he was walking very slowly, so it didn't hurt much. He felt around with his hand. Turns out it was another door. He slowly pushed this door open, and some light hit his eyes. He shut his eyes, and as his heart raced like crazy. Only after a bit did he open his eyes and saw a round-shaped room. The light was coming from the left, but it was too dim and hazy to be sunlight. He walked toward the window that was the source of light. Suddenly, a shrimp swam by outside of the window. Surprised and curious, he took several more steps towards it and saw a colorful carp casually swim by the window as well. Oh, he's underwater! He looked at the window closely and saw it actually is a huge piece of crystal that was embedded into the wall. The crystal is about the size of a tray, and the light was coming through it. He put his head up against the crystal and looked out. Fishes and shrimps swam about without any bounds being seen. He suddenly figured out where he was, actually below the lake now. It must have taken a lot of effort and work to build this room so that the light from outside would come in, not to mention this tray-size crystal. After calming down some, he immediately started to worry. Crap! I'm below the bottom of the lake now. I couldn't see a thing the entire way down. I don't know how many twists and turns that I took to end up here. How am I supposed to get out now? Turning around, he noticed that there is a stone table in the middle of the room with a stool by it. On top of the table was a copper mirror. Beside the mirror were some combs and earring type of things. It looked as if this was a beautiful woman's living place. The mirror is green with rust, and the table is covered in inches of dust. Don't know how long it has been since someone has been here. How do you know it's a beautiful woman? Like, ugly women can have combs and earrings, right? Seeing this scene, he became lost in thoughts. A girl must have lived here many years ago. I don't know what happened to her to make her want to leave the world like this. Most likely she's the girl whose image was reflected onto the cliff. Snapping out of his trance, he looked around some more. There were mirrors all over the room and embedded into the wall as well. He did a little count. There were more than 30 mirrors in total. He thought some more. The girl probably was an unrivaled beauty. Her partner died, so she just lived here all by herself. Only thing to do was to sit and look at herself all day, every day. Such a story. How can one not be sad? There are only beautiful women in Wuxia stories. True. Walking around in the room, once in a while, he would click his tongue, and other times he would let out a long sigh, only thinking about the former master of this room. After a long while, he suddenly had a thought. I'm so busy thinking about the sadness of the former owner that I forgot about my problems. He started to talk to himself. I, Duan Yu, am a stinking male. If I die in this place, then I could very well offend the beautiful lady. What? It is best to die outside by the lake. Else, if others come here in the future and find my body here and mistake it for the lady's body, then isn't that... Before he thought about what that really is or isn't, he suddenly noticed that a mirror on the east wall was reflecting the light onto what seemed like a crack on the southwest wall. He immediately ran over and pushed hard on that piece of rock. As expected, it really was a door. As it slowly opened, it revealed an entrance. Looking into the entrance, he saw another flight of stone stairs. In excitement, he let out a yell and danced around for a while before moving on. After walking another 10 or so steps downward, he faintly saw another door in front of him. He pushed the door open. Light hit his eyes as he let out a scream. Ayo! In front of him was a beautiful girl dressed in formal clothing, holding a sword in her hand. The point of the sword pointed right at his chest. Oh, maybe he's right. After a long time, the girl did not move at all. He looked at the girl closely, noticing that even though her expression looked real, she does not seem to be alive. Summoning his courage, he looked her over closely again. Only now did he see that she is a statue made from white jade. This statue is the same size as an actual human. The light yellow-colored silk shirt she has on were lightly moving in the wind. The most interesting feature were her pupils. They are alive with spirit and expression. All Duan Yu could say was, so sorry, so sorry. It is so rude to stare at mist like I am. He knew it was rude, but he still could not take his eyes off of her. After staring for who knows how long, he finally figured out that the eyes were made from some kind of black gem. But the more he stared, the deeper her pupils seemed to become. The fact that the statue looked so very human-like was mainly because of the spirit and delicacy of its eyes. The white jade on the statue's face has a faint sign of redness, making it even more human-like. Duan Yu stepped aside to look at the statue, but noticed that her eyes followed him as if she were alive. In shock, he leaned his head to the right. The eyes of the statue still followed him. No matter where he stood, the statue's eyes were always looking at him. The expression in her eyes were even harder to figure out, seemingly love and happiness, but not really, seemingly sincere in love, yet also seemed silently depressed. He was spellbound for a time. With a deep bow, he said, Dear goddess, Duan Yu was fortunate enough to see your beauty today. I can die without no regrets now. Wait, with no regret. Goddess, you have separated yourself from the world to live here by yourself. Hope it wasn't too lonely. The colors from the statue's eyes changed, as if she heard what he said and was truly touched. By now, Duan Yu was completely spellbound. It's almost as if he was possessed, as if he can't ever take his eyes off the statue again. This guy falls in love very easily. First it was Zhongling, now it's this freaking statue. He muttered, Don't know how I should address dear goddess. He thought, I should look around to see if she left her name around here. Looking around, he saw a lot of writings on the wall to the east, but he didn't really pay attention to them and immediately went back to staring at the statue. This time he noticed that the hair on the statue is actually real human hair, curled up in a bun. The hair around her temples were like a fog. By her temple was a jade hairpin. On the hairpin was 2 pinky-sized crystals, shiny and colorful. The walls of the room were full of gems and crystals as well. On the wall, on the west side, 6 large crystals were embedded into the walls. Beyond the crystals was the faint glow of water, making this room several times brighter than the previous. He stared blankly at the statue for a long time again before turning away. He noticed that the east wall has been smoothed out, and several lines of words has been carved onto it. The lines were all taken from Zhuangji, who was a Taoist philosopher. Mostly from the books of Carefree Travels, Principles of Nurturing, Autumn Waters, and Epitome of Happiness. The calligraphy was elegant and refined. The words seemed to be carved with a really sharp tool, where every stroke is about half an inch deep. At the end was another line, dedicated to dear Chiu Shui. What? Dedicated to dear Chiu Shui, from Carefree Man. No sun and moon in this cave, truly the epitome of happiness in the mortal world. Duan Yu stared at these words for a while, thinking, this Carefree Man and dear Chiu Shui are probably the two masters that were practicing swords decades ago, and this statue is probably that dear Chiu Shui as well. Carefree Man was able to live with her here in this serene cave. That really is the epitome of happiness in the mortal world. Actually, who says it's merely epitome of happiness in the mortal world? Does heaven have such joys? Wow. Where can you get a statue like that? Yeah, it doesn't exist in this world, I'm sorry. His eyes moved onto the other lines on the wall. Small and insignificant mountain, immortals dwell within, skin like ice and snow, graceful virgin, no need for foods, and shows joy in breeze. He turned to the statue and thought, using these words by Zhuangji to describe dear goddess could not be any more appropriate. He walked in front of the statue and stared. Seeing her ice-like skin, he did not dare to even lift a finger and touch her. It was as if his heart was possessed. He even faintly smelled some musk, like incense fragrance. Some musk-like incense? Really? Seems like it's all in your head, dude. Can incense smell like musk? What the hell? That's not like any incense I've ever smelled. Can I make my eyebrows dance? From love was born respect. From respect came obsession. After who knows how long, he suddenly blurted out, Dear goddess, if you are willing to say even one word to me, then I would happily and without regret die 1,000, no, 10,000 times. Suddenly, he kneeled. When he kneeled, he noticed that there were two mats in front of the statue, seemingly placed for people to kowtow to the statue. His knees were resting on the bigger mat, while there is a much smaller one just in front of the statue, seeming made for people to kowtow. So, he did. So there are two mats, a bigger one and a smaller one, and he's going to kneel down and kowtow to it. Suddenly, he noticed that there seemed to be words sewn onto the inside portion of the statue's shoes. He looked harder and recognized that on the right shoe was sewn, Kowtow 1,000 times, then obey my orders. And the left shoe reads, Whoso follows my instructions will never have regrets. These 16 words were literally smaller than the head of a fly. The shoes were green like the lake, and the 16 words were sewn using a thin green line, only slightly darker than the shoes. And in the hazy and confusing lighting of the room, there is no way these words can be seen without first kowtowing, followed by a careful look. So he's kowtowing, and he sees these words on the statue's feet. Duan Yu felt that kowtowing 1,000 times was actually very natural of a thing, adding on top that he would be able to get a chance to obey the statue. He really couldn't ask for anything more. As for following her instructions, he wouldn't mind jumping in boiling oil or burning seas. Of course, he would not regret it. So, without a bit of hesitation, with his mind not all there, he started to really honestly kowtow to the statue. All the while he counted out loud. 5, 10, 15, 20. Oh, you know what? Okay. I'm going to give him a little bit of a break, okay? A little bit of a break. Remember, he's been there for what, 4 or 5 days or something? He must be delusional, right? He hasn't had anything to eat. So this guy must be like out of his mind. So okay. Okay. Right. It's not too bad. Can't blame him too much. Hold up, who embroidered all that into some tiny shoes? Yeah, who knows? Who knows? When he got to 500, they made 500 kowtows, or 500 bows. His waist was sore, his bones hurt, and his forehead felt numb. But he told himself that he would not stop until he gets to 1,000, no matter what. He can't even accomplish the first instructions he got from the dear goddess. Then how does he get off saying he'll never have regret? By the time he got to 800, the smaller mat had been worn through, exposing something underneath. He didn't bother and still went on kowtowing one after another. When he finished, he stood up. Suddenly, he felt his waist give out and fell flat on his back. What about that fruit? Oh, you think that fruit was also like had some psychedelics or something in it? Maybe. Could be. Could be both, right? He ate something bad, and he also hasn't eaten for a long time. So he bowed 1,000 times. But he just lay there, resting. Even though he is worn and sore all over, he still felt great in his heart, for he has done something that the statue asked of him. Only after a long while did he finally and slowly got up. He touched where the smaller mat was worn through. It felt smooth and soft to the touch. Turned out there was a silk bundle underneath. He thought, so, dear goddess had this planned out a long time ago. If I didn't kowtow 1,000 times, the mat wouldn't have been worn through, and the treasure that she has rewarded to me wouldn't have appeared. Okay, so you see what happened? He bowed, and then his head touched the mat, the little mat in front, right? But he bowed 1,000 times, so I guess it was made of really bad material. It worn through, and there's a silk bundle inside of that mat. He never cared for jade, crystals, or pearls, but since this silk bundle was given to him by dear goddess, he would treasure it like no other, even if it's only a pile of dried up leaves. He grabbed it with his right hand, but immediately put his left hand on it as well, and held it up to his chest. The silk bundle was about a foot long, and on it were written these words: "You have already kowtowed 1,000 times, meaning that you have admitted as my subject and will listen to my command without regrets. This volume is the essence of our carefree sexist Kung Fu, Xiao Yao Pai. From this day forth, you shall, from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., follow and practice the instructions within. Then you can rightfully read the instructions. Then you can rightfully read the collection, and all the kung fus of every sect in the world will be yours to use. Learn what you can and want. Afterwards, leave and kill all of the disciples and descendants of the carefree sect. If one fall through the holes, then the heavens will curse you." So it looks like it's a book of kung fu. He found some secret kung fu. His hands that were holding up the bundle could not stop shaking violently as the thoughts ran across his mind. What does she mean? I don't want to learn kung fu. As for killing all of the disciples of the carefree sect, I have even less urge to do that. But how can I not obey dear goddess's instructions? I have already kowtowed to her 1,000 times, which means I am now a willing subject of hers. But she wants me to learn kung fu and kill? What should I do? His mind was a mess as he thought to himself. She tells me to learn the kung fu of the carefree sect and kill all of the disciples of it. How strange. Probably her martial brothers and sisters did something horrible to her, so she wants revenge. Yet she was not able to before her death, so she wants to have a disciple to finish this wish of hers. Those people did bad things to dear goddess. Then, without a doubt, they are the most evil and sinister people in the world. When Confucius said, revenge without righteousness, he was talking about this kind of stuff. Dad also said that even if I don't want to kill bad people, when they meet me, they would want to kill me. So if I don't know any kung fu, then all that I can do is wait to be killed. There is a lot of sense in what he said. The statue does what his father couldn't? True. His father couldn't convince him to learn kung fu, but this freaking statue does. When his father was forcing him to learn kung fu, he whipped out all kinds of philosophies and arguments of Confucius and Buddhism to say that it's not right to learn kung fu. His father's knowledge in this subject is not on par with him, so he could not argue with him. Yet, at this moment, he is obsessed with the statue, so he naturally feels that there are some sense in what his father said. If his father had just paid a beautiful lady martial teacher to teach him, he'd have been a master already. True, Losh, true. Yeah, his father wasn't thinking. His father should have just hired a pretty lady, or just made a statue, right? And he would have learned it. He thought some more. Dear Goddess has been gone for several decades now. I don't know if there is still a carefree sect in this world. As the saying goes, evil only begets evil. Maybe every single one of them have already got what's coming to them, and there's no need for me to kill them anymore. If there are no more disciples of the carefree sect, then dear Goddess's wish has come to fruition, and she need not be full of hate up in heaven where she resides. Once he thought of this, his heart relaxed and he stopped worrying. He silently prayed, Dear Goddess, whatever instructions you leave behind, Duan Yu will obey without question. But hopefully your powers knows no bounds, and the disciples of the carefree sect have already met their ends. Nervously, he opened up the bundle. Inside was one single roll of silk scroll. And that's it. And we're done. And we're done for the day. We'll continue next time and finish the rest of the chapter. That was a good place to stop, wasn't it? Hi, Indicolite. How you doing? Oh no, I forgot my drink. Hold on. Give me 1 second. All right. We're almost finished with this bottle too. All right, cheers. When will be the next stream? The next stream will be next week at the same time. Next week, Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. All right. Good chapter, you guys. You guys like that? Yeah. You watched the TV show, Demi-Gods? Which one? Which adaptation? Which one is a good adaptation? Do. All right. I hope you guys liked that chapter. That was a funny chapter. Okay. It made sense, right? It's kind of weird that he was like, "What the hell?" He falls in love with this statue and he's acting all weird. Well, it makes sense because he's been there for like 5 days. He's had nothing to drink, so of course he's all delusional. He's like, "All right, guys, thanks for joining. I'm glad you joined. I hope you like the chapter. Come back next week. All right, I love you. Bye."